I hope so anyway. Hope that's the right one. I hope I studied the right one. We're in Genesis chapters 42 and 45, mostly in 45, a little bit here in 42, as we begin, and as we also wrap up this unit on family relationships, and specifically today we're going to talk about family reconciliation, as we're going to look at the amazing ending of the story of Joseph and his brothers today. We do have one more lesson in this quarterly next week. It's kind of a Thanksgiving themed lesson on Psalm 30. So that's what we'll be doing next week. Then right after that, we'll be in a new unit. So if you want to go ahead and grab you a new quarterly over there, you can do that as you go out this morning if you haven't picked up one already. So we've been looking at family conflict, family relationships, and today we're going to look at and specifically talk about reconciliation, restoration, forgiveness, repentance. Are all themes of this lesson today, and I think probably refusing to forgive others is probably one of the greatest roadblocks that we come across in our personal lives, in our church relationships, in family relationships, just being unwilling for whatever reason to forgive is one of the things that really hinders our growth. It hinders our ability to move forward to being the people, being the family that God has called us to be. And whenever we have those kind of attitudes of resentment or just an unforgiving attitude, it just weighs us down, and it just keeps us from experiencing life the life that God wants for us. It keeps us from experiencing the joy that we should have as believers. And many times all it takes is just that, whatever it is that makes us take that first step toward reconciliation. That just, once you take that first step, it kind of can just, happen. And we're going to look at that a little bit today. And regardless of how hurt we are, the road to reconciliation, God is making a way and making a path for us to be restored in all of our relationships and strengthen our family relationships, because we're kind of talking about this in context of family through this unit. But somebody, let's just somebody read for me verses 3 through 5 of Genesis chapter 42, and then we'll kind of set the scene and move forward from there.
So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he thought, something might happen to him. The sons of Israel were among those who came to buy grain, for the famine was in the land of Canaan.
All right, so a lot's happened since last week's lesson, right? So where you guys left off last week, basically, Joseph's brothers had thrown him in a pit and sold him into slavery, right? And so now we're 20 years later, okay, where we're picking up this story today. So 20 years, what's happened? Fill me in. Instead of me setting the stage and the setting for you, we're all just going to kind of do it together. What all has happened in the last 20 years?
Well, he got sold out by his brothers. He
Okay.
was in different positions in the house.
Okay.
Got betrayed by his master's wife, put in prison, spread the gospel, had dreams, was sent for by the Egyptian Pharaoh to interpret dreams, and then was one to store grain and everything. Now people are coming to him and to Egypt for grain.
Okay.
There you go.
All right, that's some of it, right? That's a lot of it.
Yeah.
That's a lot of it. What else has happened? Not that you left out anything.
Oh, well, there's more.
There's more, but there is more. But so yeah, that's the storyline, right? That's the that's the that's the storyline. But what else has changed?
Joseph has changed.
How has Joseph changed?
He spent a lot of time in jail.
Yeah.
He got accused of a lot of things that he didn't do. And he has matured. I think God's matured him while he was going through all that stuff.
Okay.
Not an easy thing.
Absolutely.
Now,
Yeah.
the second
Let's just stick on Joseph for just a second, because what else has changed about Joseph?
Well, he's the second in charge in the whole land of Egypt.
Okay, so we went from about as low as you can get to from as low as you can get to as high as you can get, because you can't go any higher than where he is in Egypt right now, right? What else has changed?
Through that whole thing, through that whole process, he didn't let the situation define who he was. He didn't give in to whatever things that he could have got off the path with.
Yeah.
His heart has changed.
His faithfulness throughout all of it is really commendable, remarkable, right? What were you going to say?
His heart has changed.
His heart has changed?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in what way?
God has softened his heart, and even though it has changed his heart, being in the presence of his brother kind of triggered some of the stuff. But I feel like his heart has really changed.
Yeah, let's not forget. I mean, we tend to see Joseph early on as a victim, and he was certainly a victim. But
He was an arrogant victim.
he was an arrogant, prideful victim.
Daddy loves me more.
You know what I mean? He wasn't, he's not the same, okay?
He's had time to reflect and see how God's worked in his life.
Yeah,
Even in all those difficult circumstances.
right? Yeah. He's also daddy. And if you don't think that changes you, Trey, that changes you, doesn't it? Right? Think about the things. These are some of the things we kind of tend to overlook, we kind of forget, you know what I mean? But he's married, he's got 2 boys, you know what I mean? He's got he's got his own family at this point. There's a lot of things that have changed. So, what else has changed? Anything else? What else has changed? Let's think about the other characters now. We've talked about Joseph. Let's think about the other characters. How have they changed? We're going to get into them a little bit here in a little bit, but okay. I'll just say. Look, I'm going to take the obvious one off the board that I just mentioned. They're all daddies now too. Okay. They've all got wives. They've all got children. They've all got different responsibilities. They've grown. They've matured, and all of these different types of things. Okay, so I just want you to kind of think about that. I want you to think about the people. I want you to think about how maybe God's been at work, and even in this passage right here, even at the very beginning of it. We didn't read this, but I love what verse 1 of chapter 45 says. Or not 45. I've turned to 45 because I knew I wouldn't be able to get my pages turned over there. But at the beginning of 42, right? It says, now Jacob saw, this is their dad, Israel. So now Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, and Jacob said to his sons, why are you staring at one another? Okay? Why is he looking at them going, why are you all standing around staring at each other?
Is it like when you ask some of us to read a passage?
Or pray.
Or pray. To Jacob, there's an obvious solution, right? There's an obvious solution to the famine. There's obviously a solution to their need for food and grain for their families and their livestock. But nobody wants to go to Egypt. Why does nobody want to go to Egypt?
Because that's where Joseph is.
That's where they think maybe.
Yes.
That's the last direction they saw him going. Okay? They don't really know for sure,
But who wants to take the
but
chance?
they know that they sold him and he was going south the last time they saw him, right, John?
Right. And I was gonna add, hunger changes your life.
Okay?
We have not experienced that here in this country, but it does change your life.
It changes things, right? I don't know what that, I have no idea what that is like. But yeah, he says, behold, I've heard there's grain down in Egypt. Let's get down there, guys. Let's load up the trucks. Well, they didn't have trucks, but let's load up the camels and let's head to Egypt and get some grain and take care of this situation. So, and this is a matter of life and death, right? This isn't, where do you want to go to eat tonight? I don't know. Where do you want to go to eat tonight? What do you want? Well, I don't know. What do you want? I ask you first. This isn't one of those things, right?
I always wanted to open up a restaurant saying, I don't care, I don't know. Oh,
You got that, right? Yeah. This is a matter of life and death, but yet the brothers seem hesitant. I think that there's a very real possibility that the very mention of Egypt, whether they really know or not, they know that's the direction, right?
I want to go there.
Probably brings up about a lot of bad memories for them about their brother and about having sold him to a caravan that was at least headed that way. Does it cause their hearts to? Are they experiencing anxiety and all that kind of stuff? Wondering about whatever happened to him.
I think there's also that, as you look at this story, the idea that Jacob still is holding them accountable in a way, because, hey, how do you lose your brother, and the fact that he doesn't send Benjamin with him is indication that, hey, he still doesn't completely trust those others.
Yes, that's another person that's another character in the story that's changed some. Right? It's interesting because even as we look at that, why does he hold Benjamin back? Why doesn't he let Benjamin go with them? You said
Yeah.
it. It's. We tend to tie this right back to last week's lesson, and we think it's favoritism. It's not. It's he doesn't trust them, and he still holds them accountable for Joseph. Okay? And that's one of the reasons why, even in all this, it doesn't say, you know what I mean? You kind of think, oh, well, it's because he's the other son of Rachel, and he doesn't want to lose that one. He doesn't really trust the other 10. Okay? And he still holds them responsible, and I think Jacob still holds himself responsible. I think there's a little bit of, I think Jacob's dealt with a lot of guilt. Because what was the last thing he did? He sent his son Joseph to go check on his brother, right? And don't you know there had to be a lot of nights of a lot of what ifs. What if I didn't send him? Why did I need him to check up on them? Right? I'm pretty sure they were fairly capable. He probably never even needed to send them to begin with. He kind of put him in a bad situation. But anyway, that's another lesson for another day. Okay. But that's something else that is here that's unfolding. Then the other thing I just want us to notice here again is I want us to see this in the light of a crisis. Okay. They were starving. This is a crisis. Okay? And the question then is, can good come out of a crisis?
We may not see it right away, but there's always a back end of the tale to be had.
Okay. Can you guys think of a time in your own life where a crisis turned into a blessing?
Oh, yeah.
And without telling me like the whole story of the specific, what's the general thing about a crisis that turns about that crisis that made it become a blessing?
You think it's worse than it's gonna be, or than what it is?
Okay? But,
Pulls people
but what made it, what made it a blessing? What turned it to a blessing though?
It pulls people together.
Okay, because it may have pulled you together, pulled people together. And I think that is so true in most crisis situations, right? A lot of times in crisis situations, you realize it brings people together. And that's a way that it can turn from a bad thing into a blessing. And
I think too, usually a crisis is defined by the fact that things have happened that we have no control over. We have no control over the outcome of the crisis.
yeah,
But then we're able to see how God intervenes.
yeah. And sometimes, Kenny, the good thing about a crisis is it breaks us out of our routine. Okay? Because so often in lives, what do we just get caught in? Just what we got to do, right? We get caught in our routine. We just get caught. And then whenever a crisis comes along, all of a sudden, what do? You get broke out of that, right? And you start to begin to reflect on what's really important. And what's really important? People, family, relationships, right? And all of a sudden, your focus tends to shift toward that. And I think even in the midst of this crisis, even in the midst of this famine, all of a sudden, what's important? Family, right? And we're going to go and we're going to do the hard thing here together. Because just remember, I mean, I don't know. These aren't little boys anymore. These aren't teenagers anymore. These are men with wives and children and families that now all of a sudden are going to leave all that stuff behind, and 10 of them are packing up and we're going on a mission, right? Where it's the 10 of us again, right? And it's these 10 brothers, and we're going to go do this thing together. And now, so that kind of sets the stage for this amazing scene that's about to unfold. The truth is about to be told. Years of emotion are about to be released, and God's going to do something that only God can do. He is going to bring about something good out of something bad. And that's what's about to happen. Let's jump forward into I guess we're still in 42. 42, chapter 42, somebody read verses 21 through 24a.
Then they said to each other, "Obviously we're being punished for what we did to our brother. We saw his deep distress when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. That is why this trouble has come to us." But Reuben replied, "Didn't I tell you not to harm the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must account for his blood." They did not realize that Joseph understood them, since there was an interpreter between them. He turned away from them and wept.
Okay, so we've made it down to Egypt, right? We've been brought before Joseph. Joseph sees his brothers. He recognizes his brother, and whole bunch of things, right? Whole bunch of things happening here, right? What obstacles get in the way of us repenting?
Pride.
Selfishness.
Okay, pride and selfishness. Why? How does pride and selfishness keep us from repenting? How do they do that? I mean, I know what you guys are saying, and I'm with you. I totally agree. But specifically, how does pride keep us from repenting?
Because we don't think we're wrong.
Okay? Sometimes it's pretty hard to repent if you don't think you're wrong. Okay? Do these brothers think is that where they're at? Do these brothers think that they're not wrong?
I think some of them are that way. That, well, what's he done for me? I mean, you know, and I think it goes back to, I think their dad brings a lot of this on, you know, to the kids, you know. I've seen that happen a lot of times.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. What else? How else though? Okay, so we know about their past, we know about that, and we're going to see in a minute, I think, we get to it, but that's different now. That's changed. Somewhere along the line, that has changed. In a little bit, we're going to see a brother step forward and say, we can't go back without Benjamin.
Right.
For the sake of Dad. Right? Whereas before, 20 years before, they didn't care. They were those guys you're thinking about. That they've changed, he's changed in such a way now that they're like, I mean, at the end of the climax of the story, Judah's like, I will not go back. I will stay, and I will take his place. Right? So there's going to be this change. Something's different. But how, again, I want to just, so pride is an obstacle for us repenting because we don't want to admit that maybe we don't think we're wrong. I think these boys all know they were wrong. I mean, they so much as said so right here, right? I mean, they're like, okay, this is all happening to us because of what we have done. We are being punished, right? What? Or they say, oh, well, it's just random things just happening to us. Back on the bad luck. That's not what they say, is it? They're like, no, we are being punished for what we did to our brother. We saw his distress when he pleaded with us. And we would not listen. And that is why this trouble has come to us.
Been haunting them for 20 years, too.
It's been eating at them. It's been haunting them for 20 years. For 20 years, they dealt with the guilt. Right? Man, can you imagine carrying that for 20 years?
You know, they had to go through, he had it coming, but that wasn't right.
And they know it wasn't right, right?
They're probably looking at other things they could have done other than selling him to slavery. Have a talk with him. Now listen, you're being a butt.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. But it's
You're
so
making it
hard
so
for
you
us.
like.
It's so hard for us sometimes just to simply admit when we're wrong. Right? Just to own up to it.
Pride goes before the fall.
Yeah. And such a critical step in moving forward in any broken relationship is simply acknowledging your own wrongdoing. Right?
Own it, learn from it, and go on.
Yeah. There is very little good that ever comes from feigning innocence. Oh, I'm innocent. Oh, well, if he hadn't have, because what, don't we do that? Well, if he hadn't have been such a jerk, we would have never done that. If he hadn't have been so arrogant, we would have never done that. If Dad hadn't have ever favored him over all of us and given him that fancy new coat, we would have never done this. And what do? We turn ourselves into the victim when we were never the victim. And we allow that to, and boy, isn't that the case in our society today? Everybody's a victim.
Yep.
You know, it's interesting that the victim in this case isn't the one who's been mulling and just, you know, being all bummed out about things. He's had a tough time, but he's risen from it. And the brothers, they're the ones that have really been suffering.
Yeah.
And slowly eating away at him.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. And so here now we got this scene. They're all here together, right? He's putting them through these trials. He's putting them through these tests. Okay. All this different stuff that's happening. What are Joseph's options?
Not to
Off
sell
with
him
their
any
heads.
food.
What?
Not to sell him any food, let him go starve.
Okay. That would be fairly nice.
He could make up something, throw them all in prison. He has got the power and the authority.
He wouldn't even have to make anything up.
No, he
could
wouldn't.
say, hey,
It's like,
throw them in the...
yeah, he could imprison them.
Yeah. He's got. I mean, boy, oh boy. Some of you have dreamed about this scenario.
And you know, they gotta be thinking.
Right? I mean, I'm seriously. Some of you guys have dreamed about this scenario, about the people that have wronged you in the past.
Yeah.
Oh boy, man, if I ever got in the position where I could, you know what? That's probably why God never lets us get in that position, right?
And you know, the brothers have gotten married and had children of their own, and they're probably thinking, oh my gosh, what did we do? How bad did we hurt our father?
Yeah.
How would I feel if one of my sons?
Oh yeah, and that's why I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
Because having kids changes you. I mean, you know, it does. I mean, it changes you, and you see things differently. It breaks you out of that selfish thing. You know what I mean? That happens. That, you know.
It didn't hurt him enough though to go to dad and say, "Hey, we did this," to him. You know, and
Right.
confess.
Right.
They've actually done it.
Right.
That might have helped ease a little bit of it.
20 years they carried the
I don't know. It might have. It might not have. It might have killed the old man then. I mean, I don't know. It's hard telling how he might have reacted at that point. I don't know. But yeah, God can definitely work these things together. And change things around, right? All right. So let's go ahead and move. Let's go ahead and move forward here. I'm sorry, we're kind of just hop skipping around on all this. Okay. Let's go ahead and read this next passage.
Joseph could no longer keep his composure in front of all his attendants, so he called out, "Send everyone away from me." No one was with him when he revealed his identity to his brothers, but he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and also Pharaoh's household heard it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But they could not answer him because they were terrified in his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near me." And they came near. "I am Joseph, your brother," he said, "the one you sold into Egypt. And now don't be grieved or angry with yourselves for selling me here, because God sent me ahead of you to preserve life."
Okay. So the part that we just kind of skipped, that we didn't read there, was Judah offering himself in the place of Benjamin. So they went back, they got Benjamin, they brought Benjamin back. He's accused them of all this stuff. Now he's going to keep Benjamin, and Judah's offered himself in Benjamin's place, saying that he can't go back without him, that it would break his father's heart, and even in that, Judah has confessed in full the evil which they had done, and then the pain that they had caused their father by selling Joseph, and then there's just this. I mean, can you just picture this though? Can you imagine being Joseph in this moment? right? I mean, I think his heart just melts, right? I think even up to this point, I think even though we look at Joseph and we see he's changed and he has changed and he's truly seen God's been at work in his life and everything, but he's still kind of, up until this point, I think he's still kind of wrestling with that. Man, I have got them right where I want them. And I can do whatever, you know what I mean? But he's kind of testing them. And I think as he listens to his brother Judah's appeal, I think his heart just kind of melts. And because even in his appeal, Judah is appealing to him not on their own behalf. What's at the heart of his appeal? Dad, right? And they didn't care about what Dad thought or felt 20 years ago. But now they are like, we can't because of Dad, right? And so no longer. I think that there's been this change. There's no longer was there this resentment of Jacob for having favored one wife's son over the sons of his other wives. Instead, all he sees is compassion for him and a plea that nothing be done to hasten their father's demise. And in all of this, what Joseph is learning is he's learning that time and implication, and by implication the acts of God in time, has changed his brothers. It's not only changed his brothers, but they are not the same fractured family that he knew in his youth when he was a 14-year-old. Right? They've come together, and they love Benjamin, and they love Dad, and they're not that same family that he had known as a young man of 17 years old some 20 years ago, okay? And so at this point then, and I want to come back to that idea, so hold on to that idea to wrap up here in a few minutes. But at this point now, Joseph can't even keep it together, right? He loses his composure, he cries, and he sends everybody away, and he reveals his identity to them at this point in time. And don't you guys, I know I do, don't you just love how this next little interaction takes place? What do you love about it? What do you love about what he says to him?
I think they were gobsmacked to begin with when he revealed himself to them, and they were thinking, "Oh my."
Oh yeah,
But
they're terrified. They're terrified
Yeah.
at first. Well, first let's step back for a second. First, he says, "I am Joseph," right? And I think they got to be looking at him, okay, because he's not in his multicolored coat anymore, right? He doesn't look anything like the 17-year-old boy that they threw into that pit. He's in Egyptian dress. He's got, who knows what. I don't know if they really dress the way they portray them in all the movies with the makeup and everything on. Maybe they did. I don't know.
Walk like an Egyptian.
Maybe so, right? But he says, "I'm Joseph," right? And then I like that next part. The one you sold. Right?
So they were right. Joseph was an Egyptian.
They were right. He had forgiven them, and he's going to affirm it again. But he had not, just as they had not, forgotten their despicable act. Okay? Because, guess what? That's unforgettable. Okay? So, some of you have been hurt. Some of you have had people do despicable things to you. Things that cannot be forgotten. The past may not be forgotten, but that doesn't mean you got to live in it. Get that? The past may not be forgotten, but doesn't mean you got to live in it. Joseph is ready to move forward. Joseph is ready to focus on the future. But here's the thing about the future, right? You never get there. Tomorrow may be the future, but it's only the future till tomorrow. And when you get there tomorrow, it ain't the future anymore. Because when you get there, it's today. It's the present. So really the question becomes, how am I going to live in the present? You don't have to live in the past. You can't live in tomorrow. You get to choose how you live today. You get to choose how you live in the present. Okay? So that's just a note. Terrible things have happened. Maybe you can't forget it. But you don't got to live in it. Okay? Don't be grieved. Don't be angry with yourselves for selling me here. Whoa. Right? How in the world could Joseph say that? How in the world can he say that? I'm sorry. I'm going to be a little unchristian here for a minute. If I'm Joseph, I'm still pissed. Right? How can he say that?
It just shows the strength and character that Joseph has. It verifies it. And there's so many times that Joseph gets verified in all these passages.
It shows how God worked in his life.
States, God sent me here to preserve life.
Whoa. Hold the horse. Back up just a minute with that. I'm going to throw this question out here just to make us think. Was it God's will for his brothers to sell him into slavery in Egypt?
Well, that's what this says, that it was his will. God's will.
Was it God's? Does it say that? What's this? How do you get that, Greg?
It says, and now don't be grieved or angry with yourselves for selling me here, because God sent me ahead of you to preserve life.
Okay.
God uses lots of really bad things that happen.
Okay.
Bad things happen to good people all
Okay.
the time.
So here's. I just want to note this. Okay, Greg, because I'm with you, man. Okay, I'm with you. But there's a difference between God being sovereign and God ordaining evil. Okay? What you're seeing there, even as Joseph is saying that, Joseph is looking back over his life with the perspective that God is redeemed bad. Okay? Could God have sent Joseph ahead of them or preserved life in some other way? Absolutely. Absolutely. He could have done it, right? So you see what I'm getting at? So it's not, I don't think it was necessarily God was like, okay, I'm going to make these boys sell this other boy into slavery and have this horrible thing happen to him. But I think God redeemed that situation. You know what I mean? God, what verse pops into your mind when you think about that? God works all things together for good, right? When do we usually quote that to ourselves? In the middle of a crisis. In the middle of heartache, in the middle of heartbreak, in the middle of grief, in the middle of despair. When do you quote that? Do you ever quote that self to yourself at Greg and Lynette's 4th of July party? Are you sitting around going, oh, God works all things together for good? You don't do it then, right? Because you're watching fireworks. You're eating good food, having a great time, right?
Cornhole.
Yeah, you're doing all those kind of things, right? So, what you're seeing here is Jacob can offer this kind of counsel because he is at a place now where he is viewing things from a different perspective. What is his perspective over all that stuff that happened in the past? His perspective is just the benefit of being able to look back. Right? Looking back is often the best way to see life's events. Because we can see them for what they really were. Right? And how God was at work in them. And he was convinced that God had been active in the events of his life. That's why he can say, God sent me ahead of you to preserve life. Is that an excuse for what his brothers did? No. Is that an excuse for what Potiphar's wife did to him? No. God, without question, what his brothers did was evil. God is not the author of evil. What Potiphar's wife did was evil. Right? God did not cause them to make their evil plans and act on them. Okay? But he is convinced, like Lynn said, that God has sustained him through all these trials.
He doesn't have his bitterness glasses on.
God has sustained him through the jail, through the prison, through interpreting some dreams, and then they still forgot him, right? Through all these things that's happened, God has been with him. God has sustained him. And he's able to look back on all those trials, and he is seeing God in the midst of all of it. He's seeing God is using his sovereignty, his divine providence, as he has used those life events to bring to pass his plan and purpose, which was preserve life. Okay? So, God didn't make them commit the evil. But here's the thing, guys. God is proved that he is greater than the evil that they committed. God had transformed human sin into a divine blessing. Okay? That's what's happened here. God does work all things together for good, right? And it's going to become a divine blessing. From that blessing, a Savior is going to come that's going to make possible healing and restoration for all who are going to believe, okay? So, a couple things I want to point out. Forgiveness does not mean that the past has been or even should be forgotten. Because sometimes recalling our past failures keeps us from committing them again in the future. Okay? But forgiveness does mean that we don't allow the past to control us. You don't got to live in it anymore. God is sovereign, and he's able to take our mistakes and our failures and those of others and fit them into his larger plan. Okay? The truth is now out in the open. Joseph had to decide how he was going to deal with that truth and his past. Man, he could have used the truth as a weapon. He could have chose vengeance, bitterness, and you know what? The story could have went that way, and if we were watching it in a movie, we'd all applauded. We'd all been like, yeah, we like that. We liked that. Because it was justifiable. Right? The brothers don't deserve this mercy. I mean, for them to have endured just a taste of what Joseph had known, we'd say is just. We would say it was fair. But Joseph rejected that approach. Why? because he saw God at work. Right? He saw God at work in the past. He looked around at where he stood. He was seated on a chair as one of the highest authorities in all of Egypt. He's married. He's got 2 sons that he loves. What does he really have to be bitter about? He's going to forgive. And he's going to move forward. And because he's willing to do so, a family is going to be reunited. A family is going to be reconciled. A family is going to be restored to a wholeness greater than they had ever previously known as a family. When they all come to Egypt, they are different. They are a family. They are not broken. They are not fractured. There's no favoritism anymore. I mean, the way they're talked about moving forward is just at one nation. One family that becomes a nation. So, when we're wrong, when we're faced with similar choices, what are we going to choose? Vengeance, bitterness, or forgiveness? Are we going to choose what's fair, or are we going to choose what's best? You know what would have been fair? They could have stayed in prison.
Yeah.
That would have been fair, but it wasn't what was best,
No.
right? Will we allow evil to be the winner, or will we see God as being the ultimate victor because he's in control?
I see him working, one boss I had out in Arizona, I been training for his boss for 10 years. And, like the last year I was there, he lost his job because he had been, taking oil and not paying for it and just one thing after another, you know, and he came and he thanked me, he says, thank you for praying for me. And I hadn't even said a word to him about it, you know.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully this will change things for you.
Yeah. A couple thoughts I want to leave you with. I want us to bring us back to us real quick. I want you to think about, and some of you are already thinking about it right now. Recall a time when you were wrong. What are your present feelings about it right now? That wrong that was done to you. And then I'd ask you this question. Does it still control you? Or have you claimed the freedom of forgiveness? What would it take for you to let it go? And then I want to remind you of something I mentioned to you 2 weeks ago. You are not that person anymore.
Yeah.
You are changed. God has changed you and grown you through those difficulties, through those hurts, through those heartaches, through those sleepless nights. And you know what? The person on the other end of that wrong, if God is working on your heart right now about that issue, what do you think is going on in their life? Do you think that God is not at work there also? You're not the same person. They're not the same person. Joseph's brothers are changed. He's changed. Even Dad, still up there in Canaan, is changed. Some of those past difficulties that hurt so bad, part of what's made you into the person that you are today. And you actually kind of get to claim victory over that. You can either choose, I'm still a victim of that, or I'm going to choose victory over that. Which one do you want to be? Are you tired of being the victim? Then choose to be the victor. That comes through forgiveness. And there is freedom that comes with that. Maybe there's someone today that you need to take that first step toward restoring a relationship. What's keeping you from doing that? There could be this kind of thing in your future. God does this kind of stuff. Our God does this kind of stuff. Don't hold up that process. Take that step and trust Him. Don't be the victim. Be the victor. Because He is the victor. All right, guys. Have a great week. Sorry we ran a little bit over. Get out there. Have a great, great morning. Great week.
Go ahead.
Dave, it's good to see you. Good to see you. We've been praying for you every Tuesday morning. I came to see you. You were asleep.
Oh, yeah?
I said, Dave, Dave, and you didn't call me. Yeah, I didn't want to wake you up. It's great to see you here. Great to see you.
Back.
Hey, Dave.
Tom?
How you doing?
Good.
Good. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
No freedom without
You're taking a nap and I saw you too.
Good to see you,
Like a cat.
That's right. You're in your own prison.
Is your neck limbering up for you?
A little bit.
Good.
I,
I'm glad you're working on it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Go ahead.
That's so fun, though. But you
Trying to
gotta,
get this to shut off.
you gotta get that moving in there, don't you?
tried last night to not take a pain pill.
Yeah. See if your doctor recommends you go watch a tennis match or something.
Yeah. They won't let me move my head. You know?
No, you're not ready for that.
No, not yet. But
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you came today.
I did too. As I told the nurse that I don't know what I was going to do Sunday. I don't want to go to church, you know.
And not only do you're not here for this,
My
the
priority.
church is
Sure.
either.
I can't. This slow connection thing is covering my finish. I can't turn it off. I can't make it stop.
That not, may not be an option.
Well, I'd like to.
Sure.
I got to talk to
Hey, LG.
Oh, okay. Taxi driver.
Zara. Oh, when you have a minute. I just wanted you to hear it from my lips. Now, I'm not going to be at the meeting, but I've appointed Cliff to run the
Of all the, you know what I mean? Of all the brothers, but I think it's because I
Shut it off. Oh, you got it on mute?
right?
No.